So today we're going to be covering the 2021 Lexus IS 300 all-wheel drive. We're going to be doing how it feels to driving review of this car. So let's get started with this. First thing I wanted to cover was the driving position. I know I've mentioned this in an interior video before, but the seat itself is very comfortable. The bolstering, you can't adjust the bolstering or any of the thigh supports, but it holds it really nicely and it's really soft. So as I guess just a lounging chair, just a chair you want to sit in, it's very comfortable. The driving position itself, I'm 6 foot and the steering wheel feels a little bit too low. I feel like it should be up here. It's a little too low, and when I try to adjust it, the steering wheel can only go further down and it can't go any more up. So driving position itself is a little weird. I can't lower the seat any lower to the ground. It's already as low as it can go. And actually, let me go. Yeah, I lowered it as much as it can go and I can't really adjust it anymore. So if it was a little bit higher, if I could adjust the seat a little bit lower, it'd be much better. You do sit pretty low in this car compared to other sedans, to be completely honest. It feels like I'm sitting on the actual bed of the car, but there's a small little tidbit there. You also have this mount here, which I'm not sure if the Lexus wanted you to rest your foot there or what, but in any case, we're gonna drive and we're gonna go. We're gonna start off in normal. There's also an eco mode and a sport mode. And really the only difference that I can discern from that is, you know, eco, they'll just hold on to the gears for longer and it'll give you better MPG. Normal is normal. And then sport, it really just makes the gears a little bit more sensitive. Nothing too crazy. I don't feel anything with the suspension, nothing else. It just makes it a tad bit peppier, but that's really it. So first thing we're gonna do is just try out a first gear. So this is Lexus's V6. This has 260 horsepower, 236 pound-feet of torque. No forced induction, no turbo, no supercharger, so you're gonna have to rev it out since it's a naturally aspirated motor. So if you really wanna feel that push, that shove, you have to rev it to, I would say, around 4,000 and then floor it in order to get that really good shove. Or if you're from a stop and you floor it, since the NA motor, it's really sensitive, it's gonna be really good there. As far as passing power, just really, you don't have anything around the 2,000–3,000 RPM. You really have to rev it out in order to do that. So if you drive anything even with a 4-cylinder with a turbo, it's going to feel a bit more, I guess, easier to drive and change lanes than you would with something like this. But as soon as you start revving this car out, it's much faster. It's a little more noticeable, but in any case, so that's pretty good. We have just a standard automatic here, torque converter, and it's okay. For, you know, there's a slight delay between the upshifts and the downshifts. The one thing you do get, which is a positive, is you get really good engagement from a stop. So it's ready to go. It's not like a dual clutch where you have to cover the gas for a little bit in order to get it to move. Everything's good to go from the get-go. So as soon as I'm here, and I just have to, you know, put my foot on the gas. I'll show you guys and I'll just start going. So put my foot there and it just goes. So I don't even have to really floor it at all. It just goes right away, which is very, very good. So here are the downshifts. I'm trying to downshift. You see that there's a little bit of a delay there. Same thing, I'll show you upshifts here. So if I'm going and shift, so there's a slight delay, nothing too crazy, but it is noticeable if you drive dual clutch transmissions or your car currently has maybe a faster transmission. Let's see if sport actually does anything different. Let's see. So go to second gear. I feel like it's about the same. It just sounds more aggressive because I was revving it out, but otherwise it feels about the same. So the one thing you do get with the torque converter is you get really smooth, or a really smooth driving experience. With dual clutches, sometimes you get the kick in the back when you shift. Here you don't really notice it that much, so it makes for far more smoother experience. So for an IS 300, it does make a lot of sense. It's just a tad bit more sportier than the 200 or 250 models, so it really works. It really works for this trim level. You also get a pretty nice sound. It doesn't sound like that trumpeting V6 that you hear from Nissan, it doesn't sound like that trumpeting V6 that you get from most, you know, Nissans usually. It's kind of muted. I don't think the sport mode opens up any exhaust flaps either. It is what it is, but it's a nice sound where if you do rev it out, you're rewarded with a little bit more sound. The other thing is the gears here are really tall. So I'm at 45 miles an hour in third gear. I'm at 3,000. So if I shift into second, I'm at 45 miles an hour at 4,500 RPM. So the gears are really, really long. Something I immediately noticed, I could be in first gear at what feels like 30 something miles an hour. So if you're used to a car that has shorter gears, this is, and it really fits the powertrain, right? So it fits the V6, so it makes sense. But it's just something you have to get used to, where if you do want to pass somebody, you really have to downshift to maybe a gear or two more than you'd probably be used to with a turbo car, because again, you don't have that torque down low to start moving as fast as you want to. All right, so we're just gonna do a launch control really quick. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna press and hold the traction control button down for a little bit until it's completely off, which it's not off. There we go. Okay, so there's not really launch control with this. Since it's torque converter, you just, traction control all the way off, foot on the brake, then foot on the gas. We'll go to about 2300. And now it's 60. So it's actually not terrible. It kind of hides itself because it's a V6 motor. You think that maybe it's not as fast when you start driving it, but when you launch it, it feels pretty good. I have to say, I'm actually kind of surprised. Initially, because of the taller gears, it feels much slower, and you really have to, I guess, push it a bit more than you normally would. Again, turbo cars make it so easy in order to drive a little bit faster, give that peppier feel than an NA motor does. So you just have to kind of bring it out a little bit more. So one thing I mentioned in the interior video is the turn signal. So most stocks have it where if you raise it all the way up, so if I did this, it would stay there, but it doesn't. So I have to press half step down in order to cancel. I can't just bring it back to the neutral position. So that's something a little bit different with Lexus. There's no physical click that comes down. What happens is when you actually make a turn, it'll turn off by itself and the blinker will just go away, but you don't have that stock coming down like you do in most cars. Brakes are actually pretty good. They're initially a little bit grabby when I first got in here, but you get used to it pretty quick, I have to say. Decent stopping power. No real complaints there. You can modulate the brakes as much as you want. So if you want more braking, you just modulate, you press the brakes a little bit more. No real issues there, to be completely honest. The steering feel is nice. There's a little bit of a dead space when you turn. So if you do a little bit, it starts turning after maybe about maybe half an inch of turning. So if you do it in normal, I feel like there's a little bit more. I think the steering does tighten up just a tiny bit. It's really hard to discern, to be completely honest, but it's just a little bit. There's definitely a lot more dead space. You can see that in normal. I'm moving the steering around, but the car's still going straight. Whereas if I go in sport, it tightens up and it starts moving more. So, but you are able to place it where you want it to be. One interesting thing here with the IS is wherever I place it, if I'm holding it from 9 and 3, and wherever I want to place it, I feel the entire chassis around me wanting to turn that way. So if you do want to attack some turns, you can really feel great feedback through the steering wheel. Actually much better than most sports cars, to be completely honest. But another thing I covered in the interior review is the infotainment system. Pretty outdated, pretty old. Again, you have to use this trackpad down here, or you could use the touch screen, but the graphics look outdated. There's not as much customizations as the competitors from the German brands in particular. You do have what you need, but again, it's just, you don't have we're still in the physical gauges, which are fine. I do like physical gauges myself, but with everyone going to the virtual displays or an instrument, and the instrument displays where it's all the way across like Audi has it, it's just something that I think Lexus always lacked, was the infotainment system, and kind of updating their interiors. They've done a pretty good job here. I do like the red on black, but again, as I mentioned, if it was a black color, it really wouldn't pop as much and it wouldn't have as much style as it does here. So I think if you are going to go for an IS, make sure you do get two-tone colored seats in order to really make it something special. I can just figure out how to. So it says radar ready. We just hold it down. Right, I can't do it in manual mode. I always forget these things. Okay, now I can set it. There we go. Is it set? It is, so let me just increase it. This guy behind me probably thinks I don't know how to drive, which, you know, might be true. So set it to 40, and then what? So I don't know if you guys can see that, but you see there's 3 bars there, so I could set the distance in the car in front of me. So 3 bars is the most, 2, and then 1 is the least. So what will happen is it'll keep that distance in the car in front of me. If I set 45, then that's where I'm gonna be going at. Let's say I wanted to go 50 and the car in front of me is going 40. Well, it'll match 40 until the car moves out of the way, switches lanes, and then it'll go back up to 50 afterwards. So the one caveat with that is, again, you can't use it in any sport modes, you can't use it in manual mode. So if you're just driving normally, that's when you really can use the cruise control and the radar assisted cruise control. Otherwise you can't. It took me way too long to figure that out, and I know in other cars you can't do it that way, so it's not Lexus's fault. I think it's just, it makes sense. If you want to drive economically and use cruise control, you would probably be in automatic and letting the car extract every mile per gallon that it can. But it works great. So you see here it's braking because this is the distance that it's keeping, and it starts braking. So whatever the car is doing, whatever the speed is there, it'll match it. Even though it says 50, that's what it'll go up to once the radar notices there's no car up ahead. It also has lane change assist, so if you do pass, here you go, it's braking for it by itself. I'm not doing anything, and it's keeping the same sort of distance. We'll go all the way to a stop. Let's see. Yeah, and it'll bring you all the way to a stop. Awesome. No, that worked perfectly. It was actually a great example. So radar works beautifully on the cruise control. It also has lane change assist, so I'll read the lanes. And if one thing I do like is this system, there's no audible warning or crazy beeps or anything that happens. What happens is you feel the steering wheel pull you towards the middle, or if you're going to the left, or if you're going to the right, it'll pull you towards the left, towards the middle of the lane, and you just fight the steering wheel a little bit. You can't overpower it. It's not too much. It's just a light little piece of feedback. I mean, you could also switch the feedback in the infotainment system to be a little bit more aggressive if you want it to be that way, but I have it on normal now. So you can overpower if you wanted to, but it's just something you do feel. If you do want to drive without it on, you could also turn it off. That's you know, it's up to you. I think I covered everything. Brakes, steering, suspension. No. So the suspension going over bumps, I haven't had any complaints, to be completely honest, in normal or sport mode. There's no problems there. It really soaks up the bumps really nicely. With the seating position, it really makes for a very comfortable drive. It's more of a comfortable cruiser than I would say, you know, a Canyon Carver or a sportier car. But you do have that, you know, ability to play around also if you wanted to, but it's very comfortable. I haven't had any issues. No, not any issues. Railroad tracks or potholes, whatever it might be, anything that I've hit, not a problem. It's not something that I noticed. So really well done. Yeah, just to wrap up, I think it's a really solid car. Lexus is known for its reliability. I think that IS300, especially 2021 right now, looks phenomenal in this gray with the red on the interior. Awesome. Get yourself the heated and cooled seats here, and honestly, you have an amazing daily driver. Maybe an exhaust if you'd want to, but I can see why everyone really loves the IS from a tuner perspective, from modability. But if you want to drive it just every day, phenomenal car. You have the all-wheel drive, you have what you need on the interior. Again, one thing I would urge, you know, if Lexus is listening, so one thing I would say again is the infotainment system does need a little bit of an update. So you might notice how outdated it is. The integration with the trackpad and the touchscreen, that's fine, except the trackpad is something that I don't think anyone really uses. You have to really, you know, slightly move it forward or backwards or whatever you want it to go, but sometimes it skips over where you actually want it to go. So I don't know, it's just something that really needs to be updated. So it's definitely infotainment. Everything else seems really solid. I haven't had any issues with it. Suspension is great. Again, just the one thing, because the powertrain is a naturally aspirated motor, you're just gonna have to adapt your driving style to kind of rev the motor much higher than you normally would if you're used to driving a turbo car. So that's it for this review, guys. I hope you enjoyed and hope it gives you a little bit more insight on the IS300. Make sure you leave a like and comment any question you have down below, and please subscribe, really helps us out. So guys, we'll see you on the next one.